Welcome to a mini series called Beyond the Veil. I've designed this to inform those of you who have clairvoyant experiences or clairvoyant visions that potentially go into fear, which automatically sort of shuts down our vision out of a means of protection based on some of the things in which you may have seen but not been able to identify. And so I started this topic of conversation over on my Instagram, and I'm feeling just to give it some more spaciousness by bringing it over to YouTube here. There'll be a reference point from Instagram to send you here. So if you've found it this way, welcome. Removing fear around our vision space or our clairvoyance is really, really important. And often what I find as a teacher of clairvoyance and helping people to tap in and utilize their vision is that we have things called like veils, and veils are put there purposely by us, by our soul, by our team, and sometimes by a process or more like a mechanism of protection, so as that we can consciously work into opening our third eye. So for some of you, this could have been like an instantaneous opening, and it's still something that you're struggling with because you don't know how to identify what it is you're seeing or what to do with what it is that you're seeing. So this series is really just here to sort of help support you in naming what some of these pieces are, and also what you can do in order to move through these potential layers that have arisen. So if you've missed the first few, head over to my Instagram. I'll link that down below. Today, we're going to actually start going into some of the different types of entities. And whilst this can be like a somewhat taboo topic, and this is going to be something that is either familiar to you or it's not familiar to you, I just invite you to come in with a little bit of an open mind. I'm really giving myself permission to step into my I don't give a fuck era. And what that requires of me is to really go in and describe this really from a place of pure truth. So this is from my own internal experience, and based on things that I have seen, I may share some story with you, etc. But welcome to Beyond the Veil. My name is Faye. I am a clairvoyant, and I teach people how to tap into their spiritual gifts and live a life intuitively guided. I'm also here offering channel collective energy readings once a month, so you can tune into those if you feel to. That's where you'd want to subscribe. Anyway, say hello, leave a comment, let me know where you are. Let's get into it. Today, I'm going to introduce what entities, as I said. So these are beings in the non-physical realm, and we're going to look at the different types of beings that we can see in this space. So whilst if you've had an experience with this and you've seen something beyond the veil, so to speak, or with your third eye, that seems to have some form of intelligence or purpose in your experience, or where you've seen that from other, it's really nice to be able to identify some of the qualities of these different beings and perhaps why we have the weakness in the first place that either causes an attachment, or whilst you may feel some of these energies in other people, and what can do as a means of protection. Now, while some of this will be taught purely only in private container, it's really nice to kind of just address this. This entity that I'm starting with today, or these entities, this kind of race, is not something that I would say is super common necessarily. So it's an interesting place to feel guided to start. But what I am introducing you to, and Star Wars did a really, really beautiful depiction of this, hence where I actually took the drawing from to make it a little less scary, a little less crazy. We're going with this guy here, these guys here. I simply call these slugs. When we're looking at slugs, my first experience of these was, I'm going to say, take me back about 10 years ago. There was a specific town in which I would visit to go and do my market shopping. And I noticed there was quite a lot of these, mostly connected to women, but I did see them around men. I would often see these energetically connected to the back body of someone. So their physical body is standing here, and I would see these slug guys almost connected from the very top of the head. The face would sort of sit here, and the actual body would sit right down the spine all the way to the feet. And they would trail behind human beings connected at that point, leaving like a sluggy, slimy kind of a trail. It sounds kind of gross. And as I said, Star Wars did a really beautiful depiction of this. I did Jabba the Hutt, or whatever his name is. there are a few kind of qualities in the facial expressions that the mouth sort of seems a little bit different when I see this energetically, and sometimes the eyes are perceived to be a little different. The eyes of these guys are sort of orange, greens, browns, quite dark in nature. The pupils are very different to a human pupil, almost mimicking like a little bit of a cat eye. They smell terrible. So if you not only just with your third eye vision, there is a sense that allows us to be able to smell energy. They smell really, really bad, almost like a mothball experience where things feel really dark and dusty and kind of gloomy. But because we're focusing merely on clairvoyance today, it's not about becoming afraid of energies and entities. Its fear is an illusion, if we want to even approach it that way. There's purpose and reason as to why somebody forms a connection or an attachment to an entity in the first place. So I have had entity possession myself. There are ways and tools to be able to clear these from your field. But if we don't go to the why, if we don't go to the cause or the weakness that allowed for this energy to come in the first place, then we're kind of open and susceptible to being able to remove this and having it reappear. So what I notice and have observed with these guys over the years is that they're often connected to, I'm going to say, like, their intelligence to be able to be propped on somebody's body like that and actually possess or interfere with right from the crown chakra all the way down the spine, is that they are very much connected and attached at that point, and they're basically using the physical body as a vehicle. What these guys love is food. I say this because the pattern of these guys often mimics the human being, starts to mimic almost the shape of the slug. So extremely overweight, very slow, quite smelly, almost sort of starts to get quite textured with rolls. There's a sinus aspect to this, which feels quite snotty, and they're often addicted to binging, eating too much food. I'm going to say that alcohol is quite connected to this. It's like a feeding frenzy. And so the feeding frenzy that the slugs enjoy, because they can't access this because they don't have a physical body, they can receive from the human beings in this place. The interesting thing is, when I look into this energetically and have observed this over the years, is that food can come in for an individual as a coping mechanism. I'm interested in what's below the coping mechanism as a means to be able to assist somebody to transform the weakness that provided the entry for this being in the first place. Often this has been connected to sexual abuse, violence, whether sexual, emotional, physical, or spiritual. It's this sensation where the spirit has been so uncomfortable and disgusted with the physical vehicle and the experience in which it's had that can be quite traumatic, that leads the spirit to exit up and out of the body in the first place. So something that is quite instantly traumatic, the spirit then up and goes from the body and the being. And what that means is that we have like an open vessel or a vehicle. The body still has memory. And so if the body doesn't know how to process this experience or have the support to release the trauma in regards to, say, the sexual abuse or the violence, it doesn't want to remain within the body and the being. And it also, the humanness will start to fetch things to push this experience down. And so from a very early age, food is one of those things that we need in order to function. And so these guys seem to be very heavily connected to what I'm going to say, like the chemicals and these sorts of things. It almost feels like salty foods that kind of affect the brain at the same time. I say like packeted things, flavors, enhancers. It's not fresh food and products. It's packaged crap that has that smell on your skin after you've eaten it, where you kind of go, hold on a moment, this is not natural for my body and my being. And so I would not always necessarily address this attachment purely from let's do an exorcism here and move this energy out of this space. We can address this from a starving perspective by starving the entity of what it is that it wants to consume from that body and being, and also addressing the trauma that triggered the spirit to up and out of the body in the first place, so that this could form attachment and connection right from the top of the crown all the way to the base of the feet. So this thing is basically kind of puppeting the human being. And this sluggish kind of behavior that comes with that can make it really challenging to actually acknowledge and also remove that energy and that entity, because of the actual discomfort of the spirit and the soul coming back into the body and making home. So self-love is going to be a huge practice here, and also in starving the energy or the entity of the food in which it needs in order to function. So cleaning up your diet and getting all of the support in which you need, by bringing in fresh produce, by stopping the binging and sometimes the purging. We're looking at a sexual element here. So some of this behavior is like addiction to porn. Some of this is unusual sexual fantasy and behavior. It's quite shadowy, and could be also connected to an addiction to, say, like masturbation or sex in a space that you need it in order to feel okay. So we can start to sort of, without an exorcism, starve the entity of the energy in which it needs in order to want to be there in the first place. So I have seen these drop away from someone who has cleaned up their physical body and well-being and had support with the trauma that caused this opening in the first place. And what I find really interesting is that you may see this in the physical person. You can see the eyes kind of step through from the physical body, if you know what I mean. But you will see these kind of directly connected right down the spine. The spine is really important when we're looking at energy, because it sits within all the chakra system. It's our nervous system. It's the information that's being communicated. So if this thing is constantly communicating through your field, eat this, eat that, do this, do that, watch this, watch that, fuck this, fuck that, it's quite an aggressive energy initially to start to release. My advice in regards to this sort of thing would be to be looking at going right back to the incident that happened in the first place, when you had that feeling or that essence of actually, if this is you and this is your experience, or if you've seen this in other, it would be about encouraging or providing support for somebody to be able to release these memories and experiences from their body. When we bring those from the unconscious into the conscious, we start to bring light and awareness and forgiveness and acceptance, and also start to this process of self-love. So looking at our actions and behaviors that feed this energy and starving this energy from that in the first place. When the soul and the spirit has upped and out the body, if there is a full attachment here, there is kind of a process of soul retrieval, which is something that can be done by a professional and also with the assistance of your higher self. That would be sort of more for a container training space. But just to bring your attention and awareness to these things, if you've seen them before, they can't really touch you. If it is not a connection to you and you've just observed this in other, or you've seen slugs, and they can be shown clairvoyantly as like small little slugs as well. Bugs and slugs are sorts of things that we do see in the astral. And we've got to almost look at the way in which like a slug operates and how it works and where those things kind of appear. And it's not something, it kind of feels gross. And so part of clairvoyance and being able to see really clearly is to be able to almost breathe through and navigate the illusion of fear as what we are seeing is truthful, if the lens is nice and clear and the information where we're perceiving that from is of the light. So to see that from your heart as well, and not to go into that space of fear and just observe that, you can actually almost treat this with an element of compassion. So perhaps this is something you've seen around your mom or a family friend or someone on the street. And, you might think your judgment initially might be, oh, that person's just overweight. No one is just heavily overweight for the sake of being heavily overweight. Find compassion for that person's story and what they have been through. Find compassion and love. Tell that person inwardly to the outside, I love you, I love you, I love you. These things can't touch you unless you are sleeping with someone or step into that field and have a strong enough connection that some of the energy is passed through. It's highly unlikely to take on a cord hook or connection from this being if it has a source of energy that it is feeding from it's not necessarily going to just jump onto you. They do leave something with what we would call like etheric slime. So there can be like a feeling after departing that person's company, or if they've come to your home, that there's kind of like a sticky, eerie feeling. Slime is something that energetically and etherically can be cleaned up as well. And so these guys, I don't know that it's necessarily about being terrified. It's just about bringing your awareness. Okay, so there's these weird little slug-like beings that Star Wars did a very good depiction of being able to describe. They're of a lower vibrational energy. They're quite parasitical. And we're looking at topics and experiences such as sexual abuse, violence, and I'm going to say like a lack of self-love or disgust in the physical body. And so with this spiritual journey, the physical body is not something that really can be denied at all. I know that that's something that I've previously sabotaged in my own experience, and that the relationship we have with external pieces to help fuel our bodies, such as food and water, and observing which chemicals affect our body in a particular way. Because if we are consuming these pieces, it can, if say you've got this attachment, or someone has this attachment, the host of this sort of more like parasitical energy it needs these things in order to survive. It needs your brain to be fuzzy and disgusted. It needs you to almost hate yourself in order to survive. And so chemicals would be a really beautiful way to start, by removing like all of I'm going to say like switching to an organic diet. Even if you want to eat the sweets and the treats and those sorts of things, there's always a vibrational essence to this. In watching something like this dissipate, we've also got to be mindful when it comes to things like exorcisms. If you were to just strip that off somebody, you would always need permission. If that was to be removed from somebody and the vehicle was then open, but the spirit and the soul weren't called back in, or soul retrieval hadn't happened, then we're still looking at an empty vehicle that is susceptible to picking up energies and may have found comfort in having that being there as a host. And so whilst this sounds a little bit strange, the trauma side of things and the embodiment work that comes with this is a necessity, because those memories need to come to light. Peace and forgiveness need to blossom and bloom from those uncomfortable and awful experiences, until it gets to the point where the lesson and the learning or the karmic interaction from that, and that's not to say all those experiences are karmic. I have full compassion, but they are there to teach us something. And this is a lot about taking your power back, recognizing yourself as love, but also having the support in which you need to be able to process that experience and bring it into the light, so as that it no longer becomes your identity, or something that is being pushed down. Anything and everything that we have ever pushed down has an invitation to come back out. And then we're not a vibrational match to this thing, or the parasite, or the host in the first place. And so coming back to that, the imagery, if you want to see it that way, SLUGS, they're interesting. And when I look at these clairvoyantly, there's like it's very dark all around them. I'm going to say that they like those like sort of underground kind of tunnely type energies, but I have never, ever, and you may have seen these connected to somebody who is fit and healthy. So I find that aspect really interesting. Anything else we need to add here? I feel like compassion when it comes to entities and energy possession is something we need to be really mindful of. It's sort of like the preparation to letting go of something like this, or observing and understanding that this person has a story and an experience that has led them to be in this position or this space, is enough to kind of just soften so as that you're not in fear. And if you've seen this, it can be shown to you as a bit of a warning. It can be shown to you as an indicator of that person's vibration and energy. It can be there as an opportunity to love that person deeply, no matter who they are or what they look like on the outside. And let's go into that place of love and support and peace and ease. And if that is something that has been around your home, or around your family members, or the people in which you like to spend time with, get moving, start eating good food together, encourage this person if you can to get the support in which they need. fear and judgment in response to somebody experiencing this is kind of going to be the worst medicine ever, because you're just affirming and feeding that host the energy in which it needs. Tell them inwardly, again, I love you. Have those conversations about their childhood per se. Look at different ways in which we can go into, like, somatic practices are going to be really beautiful here. There are so many skilled people in and around this world that I believe are here to support kind of each little piece of the pie. We don't have to do this process alone. But interestingly enough, I feel like these guys aren't like super common. When we're looking at something like vampires or reptiles, there are definitely more of them. But once these guys have been connected, they've gained quite, and they're sort of really sort of on the ball. I won't say on the ball, like completely encompassed in that person's body and being. It's gained a fair amount of intelligence, yet these guys are kind of dumb. And so that detachment piece, when it has been starved of the energy in which it needs, is something that I guess is really possible from the lens of emotional and physical well-being. That's where I'm going to start this one today. I'm really super curious if there's anything that you have seen clairvoyantly that has triggered almost like a bit of a shock or a fear response inside of your body. The idea is to be able to just observe this, to see what's the message, what's this energy showing me? Is this a warning? Is this an invitation for compassion and love? Is this an opportunity for understanding? Is this an opportunity to clean up my diet? It may be that you just see this passing by on the street and you choose to love that person instead of judge that person, because all of those judgments are sent to that person, right? What about sending them a big beam of love to help lessen that attachment? That person feels that inwardly, the body feels that. So I just think it's really fascinating and really interesting. Anyway, the origins of these guys, I haven't downloaded a lot of information about that, but I really do feel like even though there are beautiful energies and entities and beings in the other dimensions, there are some really dark and yucky things. But in some sense, they all are here to help support us in evolving. It's like, okay, thank you. You're here, and almost as a means of protection, you could look at it like this person was sexually abused. So this energy and entity has connected on there. They're now the host of this body and the being, because the spirit and the soul is too traumatized to be able to cope with this. So it kind of makes sense in that way. When I've had entity connection, or I've picked something up, or something's come up through my time, that it's because there is a match there internally. It's like, okay, where's the weakness? Where'd the fear arise? What have I been trying to push down? Why is it that I have a resonance with this being? And so it's like, thank you for showing me that. And then also implementing the tools to be able to prevent this from happening again, but also to disconnect. And those are things that in the House of Mystics we do address: entity possession and actually being able to release those. The House of Mystics is something you can see on my Instagram if you are watching this on YouTube. If you are, and enrollment's going to start in December. We do a whole heap of stuff around this, not necessarily the intricates of all these different entities and beings, but certainly a topic of conversation that we all need to be able to approach, because as we start to go into deeper layers of this, we have to be willing to see the truth. So whilst this might not be a huge part of your reality, it's also nice to kind of open to the possibility that there are all of these different pieces. And it's kind of like a computer game in some sense. It's like, wow, okay, vibrational match there. Okay, but what's the cause? What's the why? What was the invitation in the first place? Or and I know we kind of address that element of kind of, we always ask for permission with this piece, and in sharing that with someone, there's a language. People have to be ready to heal as well. And it may be this is someone in your family, or someone you know, or someone in your community, or whatever it is, or just a stranger on the street. Love them for being where they are in their part of their journey. There might be something that they don't deal with for 4 or 5 different lifetimes. And on some level, that is their soul's truth. And so we're all here moving through these different layers to clear up our karma, and the importance of having a clear channel, and energetic hygiene, and being able to see these things. It means that if you are approached by something like this, or an essence of that, or slime is left in your field, that you know what to do with that. You know how to clean that up and clear that up and love that person anyway. And so it doesn't have an impact on you or what it is that you're seeing, doing, or moving, or being within the world, because that is you as love. I believe that is what we are returning to, and fear as the illusion that is there to protect the vision on expanding even further. And so sometimes we see these things initially almost like a test or a challenge to be able to stay calm and compassionate and loving. And all of a sudden it starts to evolve into something else, where we see not only the lower astral planes, but we start to access these higher astral planes. And the astral plane is something we can have a conversation about on another day, but that is the introduction in regards to specific beings, slugs. I know that's quite a strange introduction, but it's what you got. I love you all very much. And I say that wholeheartedly. You are love. And yeah, I do love you. And I know that seems like a strange thing, and sometimes I hold that back, but I see the light in you. And I think that it's important to share those words. Okay, I hope wherever you are, you have a beautiful day, and we'll talk soon.